Michael stood before his father's grave, the Lagos morning heat pressing down on his shoulders. He touched the cheap headstone with 2 fingers, jaw tight, eyes burning but dry. 5 years of training, 5 years of silence, all led to this one morning. He whispered a promise only the dead could hear. Then he turned and walked away, leaving the graveyard behind for good. Flashback. Michael's father once stood tall in a busy office, signing deals, laughing with workers who trusted him completely. Then came the crisis, a shipment lost, a signature forged, and everything collapsed overnight. Chief Edwards smiled at the funeral, shook every hand, called himself a grieving friend. Michael watched from the back, 12 years old, fists too small to do anything about it. Present day, Michael arrived at a grand Lekki mansion gate, a folded newspaper ad crumpled in his pocket. Driver wanted, must be discreet, must be loyal. He straightened his cheap borrowed shirt and knocked at the guard post with calm, practiced ease. Inside, security walked him through steel gates past manicured gardens and gleaming cars. His heart pounded, but his face stayed perfectly still. Somewhere behind those tall white walls, Chief Edwards was waiting, and he had no idea who had just walked in. The mansion door opened, and Michael stepped into a world of marble floors and crystal chandeliers. A house steward led him past a wall of family photos, and there she was, laughing in a golden frame, Chief Edwards' daughter. Michael's steps slowed for half a second before he caught himself. He was led to a small waiting room beside the garage, told to sit, told to wait. Somewhere above him, heels clicked against marble, and a voice he didn't recognize yet called out a question through the hallway. Grace walked into the waiting room without warning, phone in hand, barely glancing up. She asked if he was the new driver, her tone flat, distracted, used to staff coming and going. Michael answered simply, calling himself Mike, keeping his voice steady and low. She finally looked at him properly, really looked, and something flickered behind her eyes. Then her father's booming voice echoed from upstairs, and she turned and walked away without another word. Chief Edwards came down the grand staircase like a king descending his throne, eyes sharp, scanning Michael head to toe. He asked blunt questions. Where are you from? Who are your people? Can you keep your mouth shut? Michael answered every question with practiced humility, burying 5 years of hatred beneath a calm, respectful mask. Edwards grunted, satisfied, and tossed him a set of car keys without a smile. From that moment, Michael was no longer just a stranger at the gate. He was inside the house his father built. Days passed, and Michael learned the rhythm of the house, where Edwards kept his private office, which doors stayed locked, which staff talked too much. He drove Edwards to meetings, listened to every phone call, memorized every name mentioned in anger. At night, alone in the staff quarters, he wrote things down in a small notebook hidden inside his mattress. He was patient, methodical, a soldier disguised as a servant. But patience meant nothing if Grace kept looking at him the way she did. Grace found reasons to talk to him, asking him to wait longer than needed, asking questions about his life that strangers usually never ask. Michael kept his answers short but honest where it was safe, letting just enough of himself show through. One evening she sat on the garage steps beside him, sharing suya from a paper wrap, laughing at something small. For a moment, Michael forgot why he was there at all. Then he caught himself, and the weight of his mission came crashing back in. Late one night, Edwards summoned Michael to drive him to a private business meeting outside the city. Michael waited outside a dim warehouse, engine running, watching shadows move behind curtained windows. He caught fragments of raised voices, a name from his father's old company, a threat, a payoff. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, heart hammering, every instinct screaming to get closer. This was the first real crack in Edwards' armor, and Michael intended to find out everything. Back at the mansion, Michael couldn't sleep, the warehouse conversation replaying in his mind. He pulled out his hidden notebook and wrote down every word he remembered, underlining one name twice. A soft knock came at his door. Grace, unable to sleep either, holding 2 cups of tea like an offering. Michael hesitated at the door, notebook still open behind him on the bed. If she stepped inside now, one wrong glance could end everything before it even began. Michael moved fast, closing the notebook shut and sliding it under his pillow before Grace could see. He opened the door wider, forcing a calm smile, and thanked her for the tea. She stepped inside anyway, sitting on the small wooden chair by his window, unaware how close she'd come to the truth. They talked quietly for an hour, about nothing and everything, until her eyes grew heavy and she finally left. Michael closed the door behind her and exhaled a breath he didn't know he was holding. The next morning, Michael drove Edwards to his private office downtown, a tall glass building overlooking the Lagos skyline. Edwards ordered him to wait by the elevators instead of the lobby, a small unusual request that made Michael's instincts flare. Left alone near a bank of executive offices, he noticed a door left slightly open, papers visible on a desk inside. His hands itched to move, but a passing secretary forced him to look away, heart pounding in his chest. The window of opportunity closed as fast as it opened. That evening, Grace invited Michael to drive her to a friend's party across town, insisting her father wouldn't mind for once. In the car, she opened up about growing up rich but lonely, watched constantly, trusted by no one fully. Michael listened more than he spoke, something rare and honest passing between them in the quiet dark of the car. When they arrived, she asked him to come inside instead of waiting outside like usual staff. For the first time, the line between driver and equal blurred completely. Inside the party, Grace introduced Michael simply as her friend, ignoring the curious stares from her wealthy circle. They danced once, laughed often, and for a few hours Michael let himself feel like a normal man instead of a man on a mission. But across the room, a guest recognized something familiar in his face, a resemblance too sharp to ignore. The man squinted, studying Michael from a distance, whispering to a friend beside him. Michael felt the weight of eyes on him and didn't yet know why. The stranger approached Michael directly, calling him by a name he hadn't heard in years, his real one. Michael's blood ran cold, forcing a confused smile, claiming mistaken identity with practiced calm. The man frowned, unconvinced, saying he'd worked with Michael's father years ago and never forgot a face like that. Grace stood beside them, sensing tension but not understanding it, waiting for an explanation. Michael's carefully built world stood one sentence away from collapsing completely. Before the man could say another word, Michael laughed it off smoothly, claiming everyone tells him he has a common face. He steered Grace away with a gentle hand on her back, saying they should get drinks before it gets too crowded. The stranger watched them go, still frowning, not fully convinced but unwilling to make a scene at a friend's party. Once out of earshot, Grace asked what that was about, her curiosity sharp and unrelenting. Michael gave her a half-truth, enough to satisfy her for now, but not enough to feel safe. Days later, Edwards called Michael into his office for the first time, a rare and unsettling honor for a driver. He studied Michael closely, asking if anyone at the party had bothered him or Grace that night. Michael kept his answers vague, sensing Edwards already knew more than he was letting on. Edwards finally smiled, cold and thin, saying loyalty was rewarded in his house and disloyalty was never forgiven. Michael left the office with sweat on his back, certain now that Edwards suspected something. Michael knew he had to move faster now, before suspicion turned into certainty. He waited for a night when Edwards traveled out of town, then slipped into the private office he'd noticed weeks before. His hands moved quickly through locked drawers, finding old files, shipping records, a name that matched his father's stolen company. Just as he found a folder marked with the year, everything fell apart. Footsteps echoed down the hallway outside. Michael froze, folder in hand, with nowhere left to hide. The footsteps stopped just outside the door, and Michael slid silently behind heavy curtains, heart slamming against his ribs. A night guard pushed the door open, flashlight sweeping the room, pausing on the slightly open drawer. The guard frowned, stepped inside, and walked closer to the curtains where Michael stood frozen, breath held tight. Just as the light was inches from revealing him, a phone rang loudly down the hallway, pulling the guard away. Michael didn't move for a full minute after the footsteps faded completely. Michael slipped out of the mansion that night with the stolen folder hidden inside his jacket, adrenaline still coursing through him. He drove to a quiet spot by the lagoon and finally opened it under the dim glow of his phone light. Inside were documents proving his father's signature had been forged, dated the exact week of the company's collapse. His hands trembled, not from fear now, but from years of buried grief finally finding proof. He looked up at the dark water and whispered his father's name for the first time in years. Michael returned to the mansion before sunrise, hiding the folder in a new place, far from his old notebook. He barely slept, his mind replaying every document, every date, every piece of the puzzle finally clicking into place. At breakfast, Grace noticed the exhaustion on his face and asked softly if he was all right. He lied smoothly, blaming a restless night, but something in his eyes told her there was more. She let it go for now, but she was starting to see the cracks in his careful mask. Michael began reaching out quietly to an old family lawyer, someone who once worked for his father before everything fell apart. They met in secret at a small roadside restaurant far from Edwards's world. The lawyer studied the documents carefully, confirming they were real, powerful enough to reopen the case if handled right. But he warned Michael that Edwards had connections deep inside the courts, and one wrong move could bury him instead. Michael nodded, already knowing the risk, already too far in to turn back now. Weeks passed, and Michael's bond with Grace deepened despite the dangers circling them both. They found small stolen moments, a drive along the coast, quiet dinners in his car, conversations that went deeper than either expected. Grace began to trust him completely, sharing secrets about her family she'd never told anyone else. Michael felt the guilt building inside him like a slow poison, knowing every smile she gave him was built on a lie. He wanted to tell her everything, but the timing never felt right, and the fear of losing her kept his mouth shut. Edwards grew more paranoid, tightening security around the house and questioning staff more aggressively than before. He brought in an old associate to review the household, someone with sharp eyes and a memory for faces. Michael recognized him instantly as the man from the party, and his stomach dropped in cold recognition. The associate watched Michael closely during introductions, a slow, knowing smile spreading across his face. Michael understood then that time had officially run out. That night, Michael packed the folder and his notebook, preparing to disappear before the associate could speak to Edwards. But as he moved through the dark hallway, he heard Grace's voice calling softly from her bedroom door, unable to sleep again. He hesitated, torn between escape and one last moment with her, and chose to answer her call. She pulled him gently into her room, wanting comfort, wanting closeness, completely unaware of the storm closing in around them. For one dangerous, tender night, Michael let himself forget everything else. Morning came too fast, and Michael slipped out before Grace woke, folder still hidden safely away. Downstairs, Edwards summoned him urgently, his face unusually pale, phone clutched tightly in his hand. The associate stood beside him, holding an old photograph. Michael as a boy, standing beside his father at the company's grand opening. Edwards's eyes locked onto Michael with cold, dawning recognition, the mask of hospitality finally falling away completely. The truth was no longer a secret Michael controlled. Edwards demanded answers, his booming voice echoing through the marble halls, drawing curious staff from every corner. Michael stood his ground, dropping the humble driver act completely, letting 5 years of hatred show plainly on his face. He admitted everything, his real name, his purpose, his father's stolen legacy, voice steady despite the storm inside him. Edwards laughed coldly, calling him a foolish boy playing a dangerous game far above his understanding. Neither of them noticed Grace standing frozen at the top of the staircase, hearing every single word. Grace's world shattered in that single moment, every tender memory now stained with doubt and betrayal. She thought of the party, the coastal drive, the night she pulled him into her room, wondering if any of it had been real. Michael turned and saw her on the staircase, his heart sinking as their eyes met across the marble hall. He opened his mouth to explain, but no words felt big enough to undo what she'd just heard. Grace turned and fled up the stairs, refusing to look back at him even once. Edwards ordered security to throw Michael out immediately, spitting threats about what happens to people who cross him. Michael didn't resist, allowing himself to be dragged toward the gate, mind racing through what came next. Outside, standing on the street with nothing but the folder still hidden safely elsewhere, he felt strangely lighter despite everything. The truth was finally out, even if it had cost him the one good thing he'd found in this entire mission. He looked back once at the mansion gates before turning and walking into the uncertain night. Grace locked herself in her room, refusing to eat, refusing to speak to anyone including her own father. She replayed every moment with Michael, searching for the lie in every smile, every touch, every quiet conversation. Deep down, some part of her couldn't fully believe it had all been fake, even as anger and hurt consumed her. Her father knocked once, tried to comfort her with cold, practical words about protecting the family name. Grace stared at the door long after his footsteps faded, more alone now than she'd ever felt in that enormous house. Michael found a cheap room on the mainland, far from the glittering towers of the island, and began building his case in earnest. He spent his days with the old lawyer, filing quiet paperwork, gathering witnesses who'd worked with his father years ago. Nights were harder, filled with memories of Grace that refused to fade no matter how hard he pushed them away. He told himself the mission mattered more than any single person, but the words felt hollow every time he repeated them. Somewhere across the city, in a mansion he could no longer enter, she was hurting too, and he had no way to reach her. Edwards moved quickly to protect himself, calling in favors from old friends in government offices and the courts. He instructed his lawyers to prepare a defense built on discrediting Michael entirely, painting him as a con man targeting a grieving family. The associate from the party proved useful, offering testimony that made Michael's claims sound like elaborate lies. Edwards smiled coldly at his own cleverness, confident that money and power always outlasted truth. He had underestimated men like this before and won every single time. Grace finally emerged from her room, pale and hollow-eyed, demanding to know the full truth from her father directly. Edwards tried to deflect with comforting lies, but her sharp questions cut through his careful excuses one by one. She asked about the forged signature, the stolen company, the man whose life he'd destroyed without a flicker of guilt. For the first time, Grace saw her father clearly, stripped of the powerful, protective image she'd built in her mind since childhood. She walked away from him that day changed forever, no longer certain which version of her family's story was even real. Michael received word through the old lawyer that Edwards was mounting a serious legal counterattack, backed by powerful friends. Fear crept in for the first time, not for himself, but for the case that represented his father's entire legacy. He began digging deeper, searching for something stronger than paperwork, something Edwards couldn't buy or bury. Late one night, an anonymous message arrived on his phone, simple and cryptic, hinting at another person involved in the original betrayal. Michael stared at the message for a long time, wondering who could possibly know more than he did. Grace, unable to shake her feelings despite everything, began quietly asking questions among the household staff about her father's old business dealings. She found an aging housekeeper who had worked there since before the company collapsed, someone with a long memory and a loyal heart. The housekeeper spoke carefully, revealing fragments Grace never knew, how her father's rise had been built on someone else's ruin. Grace listened in stunned silence, pieces of her past rearranging themselves into a much darker picture. She realized then that she needed to find Michael, not for herself, but for the truth they both deserved. Grace slipped away from the mansion under the guise of a shopping trip, her driver instructed to take her downtown instead. She tracked down the old lawyer's office through a name she remembered Michael mentioning once in passing. Michael looked up from his cluttered desk to find her standing in the doorway, disbelief and hope colliding across his face. Neither spoke for a long moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging thick in the air between them. Finally, Grace stepped forward and said simply that she wanted to hear the whole truth from the very beginning. Michael told her everything, holding nothing back this time, from his father's fall to the years of quiet preparation. He showed her the documents, the forged signature, the truth laid bare on the small office table between them. Grace read through it all in silence, tears falling freely as the full weight of her father's betrayal became undeniable. She asked Michael one final question, whether anything between them had ever been real at all. He answered without hesitation, telling her that losing her was the only part of this plan he never accounted for. Grace made her decision that afternoon, choosing truth over blood, choosing Michael over the comfortable lie she'd lived inside. She revealed what the old housekeeper had told her about another hidden partner from her father's rise to power. Michael's eyes sharpened with new focus, realizing the anonymous message from days before might connect to this very thread. Together, they began piecing together two mysteries at once, working side by side for the first time as true allies. The distance between them closed a little more with every shared discovery. Edwards discovered Grace's absence and grew frantic, calling every contact he had to track her whereabouts. When he learned she'd been seen entering a small downtown office, his fury turned to genuine fear for the first time. He understood now that his daughter and his enemy had joined forces against him, a combination he never prepared for. Edwards began making desperate calls, trying to accelerate his legal counterattack before they could gather more evidence. The walls he'd built around his empire were starting to crack from every direction at once. Michael and Grace traced the anonymous message to an old employee who once worked closely with both their fathers decades ago. They found him living quietly in a small town outside Lagos, a man who'd carried a heavy secret for over 20 years. He was hesitant to talk at first, fear evident in his tired eyes, until Grace promised him protection and Michael promised him justice. Slowly, the old man began to speak, revealing a name that made both of their hearts stop cold. The final piece of this twisted puzzle was about to change everything they thought they knew. The old employee revealed the shocking name: Daniel's own trusted business partner from decades ago, a man everyone believed had died years before the company collapsed. Michael's mind reeled, memories of childhood resurfacing, a face he barely remembered from his father's old office parties. Grace pressed for more, asking how this man connected to her father's betrayal all those years ago. The old employee explained that this hidden partner had orchestrated the forgery scheme alongside Edwards, staying silent and unseen ever since. Michael realized the man responsible for his father's ruin wasn't just Edwards. There had always been a second traitor. Grace and Michael drove back to the city in tense silence, both processing the weight of what they'd just learned. Michael's phone buzzed with a message from the lawyer. Court documents were ready, and Edwards' countersuit hearing was set for the very next morning. Time had run out for careful planning, and they now had to move with everything they had, incomplete as it was. Grace suggested a bold plan, using her position as Edwards' daughter to gain access to something Michael could never reach alone. Michael hesitated, worried about the danger to her, but Grace's resolve was absolute now. Grace returned to the mansion that night, playing the part of the repentant daughter seeking her father's forgiveness. Edwards, relieved and eager to rebuild control, welcomed her back without suspicion, blind to her true purpose. Late that night, she slipped into his private office, searching for the one document Michael needed most, the original partnership contract. Her hands shook as she searched through locked drawers, every creak of the house sending fear through her chest. Finally, buried beneath old files, she found it, exactly where the old employee said it would be. Grace slipped out of the mansion before dawn, document hidden safely in her bag, heart pounding with the danger she'd just risked. She met Michael at the lawyer's office, handing him the final missing piece with trembling hands and a relieved exhale. The old lawyer studied the contract carefully, confirming it was exactly what they needed to expose Edwards completely in court. Michael looked at Grace with overwhelming gratitude, understanding fully now the sacrifice she'd made for truth over family loyalty. Together, they prepared for the hearing that would determine everything, standing united for the first time as true partners. The courtroom filled with tension as Edwards arrived with his team of expensive lawyers, confident smirk still fixed on his face. Michael and Grace entered together, and Edwards' confidence faltered slightly at the sight of his daughter standing against him. The hearing began, Edwards' lawyers painting Michael as a manipulative fraud, exactly as planned weeks before. But when Michael's lawyer presented the forged signature alongside the newly recovered partnership contract, the courtroom fell into stunned silence. Edwards' face drained of color as the truth he'd buried for over a decade was finally laid bare for everyone to see. Cornered and desperate, Edwards rose from his seat, voice shaking with a mixture of rage and panic filling the courtroom. He shouted that he hadn't acted alone, that the real mastermind behind the forgery had never been caught or even suspected. The courtroom buzzed with confusion as Edwards pointed toward the back of the room, naming the hidden partner from decades ago. Michael turned slowly, following Edwards' trembling finger, and his entire body went cold with disbelief. Standing quietly near the courtroom doors was someone Michael had trusted completely his entire life. The figure at the door was Uncle Bayo, his late father's oldest friend, the man who had comforted Michael at the funeral and quietly funded his years of training. Michael's entire understanding of his own revenge collapsed in an instant, every certainty crumbling beneath a truth too painful to accept. Uncle Bayo didn't run, didn't deny it, simply stood there with tired, guilty eyes carrying the weight of 2 decades of silence. He explained brokenly that greed had consumed him once, long ago, but guilt had driven him to guide Michael toward justice ever since. The revenge Michael had built his entire life around now stood twisted, complicated by love, betrayal, and redemption all at once. The judge called for order as the courtroom descended into chaos, Edwards's lawyers scrambling to salvage a case that had already collapsed. Michael sat frozen through it all, hearing distant words about verdicts and asset recovery, none of it fully registering yet. Grace reached for his hand under the table, grounding him back to the present moment amid the storm around them. Edwards was found liable for fraud, ordered to return the company and pay damages that would take years to fully settle. Uncle Bayo, facing his own reckoning, chose to confess everything fully, hoping honesty now might mean something after decades of silence. Months passed, and Michael rebuilt his father's company slowly, carefully, honoring the legacy that had cost him everything to reclaim. Grace stood by him through every step, choosing a new life far from her father's shadow, finding her own identity for the first time. Uncle Bayo served his legal consequences quietly, and Michael visited him once, not for forgiveness, but for closure long overdue. The company's new office overlooked the same Lagos skyline his father once dreamed beneath, now rebuilt on truth instead of lies. Michael stood at the window one evening, Grace beside him, finally feeling the weight of 5 long years lift from his shoulders. On a quiet Sunday morning, Michael visited his father's grave once more, this time with Grace's hand in his, and peace finally settled in his heart. He knelt at the same headstone from 5 years before, no longer carrying rage, only gratitude for a promise finally kept. He whispered that the company was rebuilt, the truth was known, and their family name meant something honorable again. Grace knelt beside him, placing fresh flowers gently at the grave, a quiet gesture of respect for a man she never met but deeply understood. Together they walked away from the cemetery hand in hand, ready to build a new future on the strength of everything the past had taught them. Michael's story reminds us that truth always finds its way to the light, no matter how long it takes or how deep it's buried. Real strength isn't found in revenge alone, but in the courage to forgive, rebuild, and choose love even when trust has been broken. If this story touched your heart, you're not alone. Every day, ordinary people rise from betrayal to build something honest and lasting. If you enjoyed The Billionaire's Driver, smash that like button and drop a comment telling us your favorite moment from the story. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next gripping tale. Share this video with someone who loves a good story of justice, love, and redemption. See you in the next story.